I mean, you've defined what a producer is, but also what a studio can be. And we're sitting here in SARM West. Tell me about how you came to be the owner of SARM West.
I think it goes back to 1982. Where are we now? We're in 2008, so 26 years ago. Yeah, I made a record called Buffalo Girls, I think. And Chris Blackwell really liked Buffalo Girls, and in fact he bought that album for the world outside of England just because he liked Buffalo Girls so much. And he was because I'd been on Ireland originally with the Buggles, although we were a bit of an odd fit for Ireland because Ireland was majorly sort of reggae.
Yeah.
And I must say, the reggae guys were very, very friendly. They were really nice to us, but we were kind of techno guys. And we came here and worked once, but I hated it because it was crap. In fact, the day that we came here to work when it was Basing Street Studios was the day that Video Killed the Radio Star was #1. I think it was a Tuesday back then. You used to learn about the chart positions. Anyway, so a couple of years later, I'd done Buffalo Girls. Ireland had dropped us, so I was a bit pissed off with Chris Blackwell at the time. And anyway, Chris said he'd like to meet me again for dinner. So Jill and I went along, my wife Jill, she was managing me at the time. And I'm just trying, yeah. Halfway through dinner I said to him, "What are you doing with Basing Street?" And he said, "Oh, I'm selling it to Richard Branson. Why, do you want it?" And I went, "Yeah." And Jill kicked me under the table. I remember she literally kicked me to calm down. He said, "Well, if you want it." He said, "I'll tell you what, I'll let you have it if you start a record label for me there." So I said, "Okay." It's amazing how quickly you can do a deal with somebody if you both want the same thing. I think we did the deal 2 weeks from that night. And at the time, I wanted another studio because I was working in SARM East, and we'd actually put in one of the first SSLs.
Yeah.
We'd had a Trident before then.
That's right.
And
a B.
A Trident B series, yeah. Oh no, I think it was an A.
Was it?
Big 56-channel board.
Before your time.
Yeah, big 56-channel board. And then Jeffrey and I used an SSL down in Townhouse, and we really liked it. It didn't have any automation on it. We did a mix of Video Killed the Radio Star on it. No automation, but it had the I don't think people realise what a difference that made. It had the mute and solo buttons, and I think it had the subgroup feature,
yeah,
which even I could understand in about 30 seconds flat. And so the two of us, he'd mixed on one side, 24 over there, and I'd mixed on the other side, 24 over here, and we liked it. And
it's a very clean mix too.
No, well, that wasn't the final mix. Because, funnily enough, Hugh Padgham engineered that. We mixed it again after that on the Trident. The actual mix of Video Killed the Radio Star was done on the Trident. But I remembered the board, and when we were, the Trident was noisy. It was a good desk, but you used to monitor through this sort of jukebox section, and then you had to switch over to the main board when you came to mix, and the difference in the sound was awful. And that was always an awful moment. We decided to go with the SSL because it had the most top end on it. I was really into top end as well. I've been to America and I've worked on MCIs, and the guys out there, the engineers, put more top end on the track than I'd ever heard in my life. But it really was a cool thing because, in the days of analog tape, all the top end had been knocked off.
It's hard to explain to people now with the sort of analog myth how terribly frustrating it was.
The analog myth, I like that. Yeah, no, it was an analog myth. So I was dead against computers. So we bought this SSL, and it was great because the computer actually worked. I remember Gary Langan and Julian Mendelssohn kicking me out, and the first song they mixed on it was "The Look of Love," ABC, on the computer, and it was a new experience for me. They said, "Go on, out. You go out for 2 or 3 hours," because I was going, "It'll break down. We'll mix it by hand." But it didn't. It did once, but that was a sort of revelation. Anyway, the reason I started, you asked me about this place. we put this SSL in. Of course, suddenly, you know, I had a couple of hits. Suddenly, everybody wanted to be in SARM East. I had nowhere to go. I was constantly being, you know, traipsing around the studios of London, and occasionally it was all right, but a lot of the time it was crap. And going to places I didn't want to go, with awful old Neve boards that everyone raves on about, but you know, I could never get enough top end out of them. I used to have the flat out on the top end. You know, I used to think they sounded too natural.
Yeah,
it's funny, isn't it, how tastes change. And so when Blackwell suggested this place, I was interested, and we did a deal. We did a deal to buy the building off them as well. I mean, you know, my wife's a very astute businesswoman, and we were in within 2 weeks. We got rid of the whole staff apart from one person, I think, and we gutted the place, got rid of everything. I think we've got a few Helios modules, but that was 26 years ago. And the first record we did, I think, was probably Relaxed. It was a very tense moment because, you know, Relaxed took a few months to be a hit, and Jill and I had borrowed £1 million, I think, from the bank to do this place up.
Well, in fact, before they appeared on Top of the Pops, I mean, this was another thing I was going to say to you, is you've always chosen artists who themselves have some kind of visual thing, like Grace, like you did yourself with the Buggles, and I mean, Relax was, as you say, it wasn't looking good until they appeared on Top of the Pops, really. I mean, that was what pushed them. That was the day when a TV program could kind of make or break break an act, wasn't it? And
oh, it was very much so, yeah. And getting them on. I remember the Top of the Pops people made them promise that they wouldn't misbehave, and that was wonderful, really. What was wonderful wasn't that they promised not to misbehave. What was wonderful was that people were scared of them because it gave them an air of something or other, you know. Yeah. And that really helped. So
now it's so easy to do. Now you can just dial up a plug-in and do it. Would you auto-tune them? Wow, 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 wow. Or would you leave it? And Holly
I'd probably leave that, because I'm sure I've said that a couple of times when people ask me about Relax. When Holly first sang it, saying to him, "You're a bit out of tune on some of the ad-libs," and he said, "Which one?" And I played him without that one. And he said, "That's not out of tune." And I said, "Oh, okay, it's not out of tune." You know, it just took a couple of listens for me.
Has the technology thing kind of lost its sheen for you a bit since it has become possible to do that? Since it's become possible to do almost anything, put any drum track in time now. Is it not so appealing anymore to even do it?
Well, that's an interesting, you know, it's still about the same sort of thing. Music, it's not really, I mean, technology plays a huge part, but even, you know, you can put people in tune, but you can't give them a great voice. There's a huge difference between singing in tune and having a really good voice. Everybody expects you to tune them up these days, and sometimes it can be a little bit sad, because I would never tune someone up when their natural pitch is helps the sound of their voice. I don't know. Technology, you know, having all this technology definitely helps. There's no two ways about it. Being able to move stuff around is really useful, and I still try and keep it sort of in real time in a way. I still try and get people to sing the song from one end to the other. If I play a bass on something, I like to play it from one end to the other and then just drop any bits I get wrong. I don't like to do it in 2-bar loops. I don't. I really try. You know, we have to time the drums sometimes, but we try and use really good drummers. We use a guy called Ash Sohn at the moment, and he plays almost perfectly in time. So if we have to correct the drums, it'll be only because to make them lock with a sequencer. It won't make much difference to the sort of sound of them or the feel of them. Look. I mean, I don't. I've toyed with the idea of doing a record analog, just because it makes you do things. I don't know. I don't know what it would be like to do that again. The big problem is that the tape isn't as good as it used to be, and so the sound isn't as good. I think it would. I think in a way, it's probably better for young people to learn on analog, in the same way as it's better to learn on a geared car and then go on to an automatic car. I think analog. These days with digital, if you record somebody's voice, if you record it too quietly, you can raise it by 15 dBs if you need to. You can raise it by 20 dBs. You can take a syllable and knock it up 10 dBs without even giving it a thought. You try doing that on an analog recording of somebody, you won't even be able to remotely do that because of the noise floor. I think a lot more young people would do well to learn how to record to analog tape, because you're constantly having to optimize the level. I mean, all of the old guys that I worked with who recorded people, vocals, they'd learn the song, they'd follow the lyric sheet, and they'd be moving the fader to make. And I used to do it as well. It's very important. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to get the voice through. And sometimes I get stuff to work on, and I look at the waves, and they're all like these little awful crummy little recordings of things. I think home studio recordings of most things are generally mediocre. How could they possibly not be? Because unless you have really accurate monitoring, how can you take any chances? You can't. The thing about a proper recording studio is it doesn't. The desk. I mean, desks these days, all of them sound good, really. It's the room that the desk is in and what you can hear. Sorry, I don't want to malign your wonderful Lesser Cell here. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't have bought it if I didn't think it had a bit of an edge, but on a Mackie. But it's what you're hearing, and if you're in your bedroom and you're listening through your, everybody thinks because they buy some kind of a Neve mic pre, probably made in China now, that's going to make the quality of their recording good, but it won't. And it's not bad stuff that's the enemy. It's not something that sounds terrible. In fact, it's an achievement if you can make something sound terrible these days. Everything sounds blandly mediocre to me most of the time. And if I'm beefing about home studios, that would be my biggest beef. I have a sort of bit of a personal. I don't like project rooms.
No.
I don't think you can hear properly in them. And if you're gonna, if you're gonna make a recording, you want to be able to hear very clearly what you're recording. Otherwise, it's no fun.
You mentioned young people learning, how to record, and that's become a huge industry in itself. It's like, I think, 3,000 youngsters on courses learning how to be recording engineers for many commercial studios which no longer exist. Or, I mean, what's your view on that? Is it a positive thing that they're being taught about recording, or are there hopes being raised?
Well, the thing is, if people learn about something, it almost matter. It doesn't matter what they learn about, as long as they learn about something, and they spend their time doing something useful and constructive. The good thing about music is that lots of people are interested in it, and you're training people to record or to write, and you're right. There's hardly any studios left because studio business is dreadful. Sometimes I wonder where they're all going to go. But there's lots of different jobs that involve music. You don't have to be a record producer or a recording engineer. There's just understanding how it's done. It'll be interesting to see how it impacts. Because I didn't learn. I learned anything that I learned by doing it and hearsay.
But you're right. I mean, there's, for example, audio in games now. I mean, there's the PlayStation 2 game, Guitar Hero, where
TV commercials. There's all kinds of
trigger
things.
the samples from a plastic controller. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
It's Trevor Horn for the
for
the 14-year-olds. Instead of a big Fairlight, they have a small plastic controller.
No, I know it's incredible. I mean, it's wonderful in one sense and frightening in another sense.
In which sense is it frightening?
No, well, no. I still think the thing about the music business, it's the sort of last bastion of the cowboys. You can still not know much about it and be a complete outsider and go in your bedroom and record something, and if it just happens to be something that everybody likes, you can have a hit record and be successful. I don't think there's another business that you could do. You couldn't just go and make your own TV commercial for somebody's product and then it wouldn't work. It's too unionized anyway. Music's still a little bit like that, and it's the only one left. I just don't think there's any other business like it in that respect. And the music business, like I say, has always been survival of the fittest. You know, everyone said that, you know, when drum machines came along, what was going to happen to drummers, you know? Yeah. But there's still loads of drummers around. And the fact is that a drum machine's like a guitar. Some people are brilliant with them. Some people are crap. It seems to be the way it goes. And the people who are good will come through. And I'm sure from all of these training courses, because I've gone and given the odd talk to a couple of them, and I do, I always just say the same thing. You won't, you want to work in the entertainment business, you won't believe how hard you're going to have to work. I mean, I spent 27 years in the studio. If I tell stories about my life in my 30s and 40s, they're all studio stories because that's all I ever did, And if you're going to succeed in this game, it's much more of a life choice than a job.
You're a studio owner, producer, record company owner. What's taking up your time now?
Children. I've got 4 children, and they take up a certain amount of my time. And just keeping the business rolling since Jill had an accident, so that takes up a lot of my time. Yeah, but I still like making records, I love making records. You see, however long you do it, I still feel like a complete novice when I start, So
that's very interesting.
It's a good feeling, when you start a record, I'm in the same. Okay, I've been doing it for 27 years, but everyone starts in the same place, trying to figure out what to do.
ABC, Pet Shop Boys, Cher. Is there someone you haven't worked with who you'd really like to work with?
And with me, it's more to do with the material. I'd rather work with good material. Whichever artist, I don't mind. As long as the material is really good. Much better to work on somebody's first album than somebody's 20th album.
And I have a small trivia question for you. In preparation for this interview, I watched the video for Video Kill the Radio Star.
Oh, right, yeah.
At the end of it, there's a group playing, and there's a rather self-consciously stylish young man standing by a Roland 700 modular.
It's Hans Zimmer.
It is Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, Zimmer was in the band, yeah.
I never knew that.
No, Hans was in the band. He didn't play, but he was the keyboard sort of programmer.
Right.
Prophet 5.
Yes.
And he used to hire it out with himself.
I see.
He was a very engaging guy, Hans.
And now very successful film composer.
I think possibly the most successful of all time.
And you've been there yourself. You've done some film work.
Yeah, I did a score for a film last year. 3 months of last year, yeah.
Is that one that's released yet?
Not yet. No, and I don't even know what it's called because they changed the title 2 or 3 times.
Is that something that appeals to you, or?
Not really, no. I don't mind doing a bit of it, but I couldn't do it all the time. Drive me mad, because you make music and then people talk over it.
Yeah.
You're only one part of a much larger enterprise. I like it for the people.
Yeah.
I love the film business for the people. I love the film and the people in the film business.
Wacky.
Well, they're just very bright, and it's an interesting business. They're just bright people.
Could we learn a lot from them in the music industry? I mean, music industry always seems to be very reactive. When it falls off a cliff, then it decides to do something, whereas...
Yeah, well, they have the same kind of problems that we do, only on a larger scale, you know. When someone, you know, when the director gets a bit out of hand, it's millions instead of, if the producer gets out of hand, tens of thousands. It's so they have some, and they have the same sort of ego problems as we do in the music business. But scoring a film is a lot of people have kind of idealistic ideas of what it's actually like. It's hard work, really hard work, scoring a film, and you don't have the final say. As a producer of a record, you know, along with the artist, I kind of have sort of the final say on how the record is going to be, only because it's given to me by the artist. The artist in the end has it, you know. If he doesn't like it, you know, I'll have to change it. In a film, you're much further down the ladder, you know. But you know, there's good moments. You have to keep watching the same bit of film over and over again, and that can have strange results, you know.
What are you working on at the moment, Trevor?
I'm working on an Israeli guy called Aviv Geffen.
Really? Any relation to David
Geffen? I don't think so. He's a guy who sold a lot of records in Israel and wants to make an album in English. And I heard a couple of songs and really liked them, so I'm working with him.
It's funny because well, you have a record in the UK charts at the moment by David Jordan.
Yeah.
And when I heard it, the first thing I thought of was the beat. It sounds like the Klezmatics or something. It's got that kind of...
It has got a bit of a klezmer beat.
Stompy. I mean, is that... It's just what the clarinets are coming over the top.
Yeah. But it's but the harmony, he's a really cool kid because he's you know, he does all of his own vocals with pretty much no input from me, and his harmony stuff he comes out with, he's only 22, is absolutely brilliant. And I've not really met anybody as good as doing harmony vocals with himself since Seal. Seal was always, if you listen to Seal on Kiss from a Rose, the harmony vocals are brilliant. And Seal came in, he actually did them in here one day. Remember, he just came in and said he had them all worked out. And this kid's the same. And we did them really fast too. It's not like we spent 3 days on them. We probably did all the vocal harmonies on Kiss from a Rose in about 4 hours. I love doing it like that, when singers can do it quickly, you know, and you can stack them up and just go really fast. And this kid's got the same kind of thing, you know. If you listen to his albums, it's all him. There's no other singers, no session singers. You know, it's none of this boy band nonsense.